91 if you're in Rosenfeld. I don't have all of the editions here on my sheet. In the Lookstein edition, the current edition is page 194, and in the Art Scroll is page 152. Anyone would like to share with us the page number for paperback editions? There are two. There's the traditional, and then there's also the gray Koren booklets, which are very beautifully printed. I recommend them if you have the opportunity to trade up from the white. I recommend that one. The first long selection of Kinos are, of course, the Kinos of Eliezer Kalir, also known as Kaliri. Kalir, as you recall, to the best of current scholarship, Kalir flourished in the land of Israel, but toward the end of 6th and 7th century, the end of 6th and beginning of 7th century, the time when the land of Israel was under the control of the Byzantine Christians. The Byzantine Christians were at times very, very difficult overlords. The Code of Justinian, a great deal in it which was anti-Semitic, and we believe that during Kaliri's life, he actually saw the Arab conquest of the land of Israel, which was a little bit easier, but brought its own set of issues. Exactly the identity of Kalir we don't know. The first time he is referenced clearly, as fairly early as already by Sadia Gaon. Sadia Gaon was himself Haitan of extraordinary creativity and talent, recognized already the ancient contributions of Eliezer Kalir. Kalir functions on Tisha B'Av really as a kind of liturgical psychologist, if you will, perhaps a liturgical philosopher. In that, remember that when you're already in the 6th century in the land of Israel, the notion that there is no Beis HaMikdash is one which has already grown old and familiar. And human beings have the tendency to get used to almost anything. And so there is a new normal, a world without a Beis HaMikdash. And so part of Kalir's great enterprise is to find a way to connect people to the living tissue of grief and of loss concerning this ancient event. And he recognizes that not everyone responds to Churban in the same way, and that there need to be different portals of entry, different ways in which to understand it. Some of these will be based upon extraordinarily adept manipulation of familiar texts, as we'll see in one of the examples this morning, using Tochacha. Others work on raw emotion, in the sense of outrage, in the sense of desolation. Still others take very specific, personal kinds of stories, and through the narrative where all of Churban devolves upon very specific human tragedy, evokes that in that sense. The first of the Kinos, which we will be reading, Shavas Suru, is of course a remnant of a larger work and of a very ancient form. There was a time when the Karovos, the piyut, actually was woven into the fabric of the Shemona Esrei itself. And so when the Chazan would repeat the Shemona Esrei, each of its brachos would have their own kinot, so to speak, their own lament inserted. Well, by the time we get to Shavas Suru, we have come, so to speak, to the end of the brachos of the Shemona Esrei. The Shemona Esrei has 18, then later 19 blessings. And there's still more alphabet in the acrostic left to use up. And so what we have as the first of the freestanding kinos is actually the spillover from the ancient elaboration of the Shemona Esrei itself. It's interesting, as we daven on Tisha B'Av morning, I think we miss the first kina. What do I mean by that? The first kina is the tefillah itself. There are so many places just in the words that we recite day in and day out, that when we reflect upon them in the light of Churban, they take on an altogether eerie glow, a kind of appropriateness. I mean, when we read the words "V'la malshinim al tihisikvo," please deprive those who are the enemies of the Jewish people, deprive them of their vitality, as it were. You can't help thinking about the periods of history in which those who wanted to crush us and break our spirits seem to be in their ascendancy. Read the words from Yerushalayim Ircha Barachamim Toshuv. How can we not think Yerushalayim in its desolation? And so the beginning with Shavasu reminds us that the large part of the first and maybe greatest kina has already passed. We've already said it. It's the tefillah. And now we are sort of, in a way, we are proceeding from the last fragment. Shavasuru is Kalir at his most impenetrably dense. Kalir is capable of poetry so filled with allusions and requiring such depth of scholarship and poetic sensitivity that it almost defies interpretation. And so I would turn with you, if you wouldn't mind, just to the third of the verses, page 91. Quite know the other ones. It's the third paragraph. Al Pnei Peras Nuptsu Chasideha. Are you there? Al Pnei Peras Nuptsu Chasideha refers to a passage in the Midrash Tehillim, which tells us that when the Jews were taken off to Babylonia, and here I might add parenthetically that one of the extraordinary characteristics of the kinos as a general production is that we move quickly between elements taken from all of the experiences of destruction, from the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, Beitar, and of course this to everyone which has taken place subsequently, and they're all part of one stem, one core. So, of course, something that the Rav was focused upon. Here is the Midrash in Tehillim, which tells us that when the Jews were exiled to Babylonia, particularly the first wave of the exiles, which included the aristocrats, that they were people of great delicacy, and this was reflected even in their physical nature. The waters of the Euphrates, we know, were always reputed to be polluted. So it was a slow-moving river. Always associate Babylonia with its mud and its swampiness. And they say that more people died from drinking the water of the Euphrates than were killed by Nebuchadnezzar himself. And so imagine, if you can, the word nuptsu means they were splintered, they exploded. Chomer Efetz is, even in modern Hebrew, I think, explosive materials. Imagine the aristocrats of the land of Israel in such intestinal agony that they feel like they're exploding. They're dying, but in a way which so diminishes their natural dignity. And then he goes on, still with the letter Pei, Al Yesuf Zochra Karu Yisodeha, that the waves of the Sea of Reeds remember the splitting. In other words, the scenes where Hashem has come to the rescue of the Jewish people. And here you have these two bodies of water. You have the Euphrates in its sulky, sullen pollution, its dirtiness, and you juxtapose it to the Red Sea with its walls standing aside so that the Jewish people could cross. See the heights and the depths of Jewish history. And Pachad Chet Shiloh Tokaf Sodeh, the terror of the sin of Shiloh takes over or paralyzes its advisors. Here the Rav has an extraordinary comment. The Rav takes us back. Talk about the Chet Shiloh. What is the sin of Shiloh? The sin of Shiloh is the sin of the sons of Eli, who, according to the Tanakh, seem to have taken advantage of women's suppliants who came to the tabernacle. The Gemara in Shabbos says this is somewhat overstated. What was their sin according to the Gemara? The sin was that once a poor woman came at the end of the day. She was offering the most modest sacrifice, two little birds. This was the sacrifice typical of the poor. And the sons of Eli said to her, "We are so tired from our day of work in the sanctuary. Stay overnight, come tomorrow." The Gemara says that for this sin, for having told a poor woman to stand at the door, and the Rav in his genius elaborates, imagining that she has children she's left at home, and now she's being told, "Oh sure, just come back tomorrow." And she's imagining, what if I had been a rich woman? What if I had come with a sumptuous sacrifice? I bet you they would have made time for me at the end of the day. They would have received me. And when the elogist says, Tokaf Sodeha, that the advisors are seized, are paralyzed, it's because anyone who has ever served the spiritual needs of a community is thinking to themselves, when did I do that? How many times did someone come to me and say, I have a question, I need a mishaberach me, could you see someone in the hospital? And I said, you know what, tomorrow, tired, talk to the shamus. There's always the human at war with the mission. And so when they remember that we lost a mikdash already, we lost Shiloh, and what was it that cost us that? They are stricken with a sense of guilty recognition. Then he says, Potsu Chazire Ya'ar Ayeh Chasidel. The wild boars burst through. The wild boars here, of course, representing the conquerors. But do you know anything about wild boars? They are among the most terrifying creatures on God's earth. They're highly dangerous. They live in the forests. They can eat almost anything. And even the great predators are afraid of them. And so the Chazire Ya'ar, the wild boars, burst in. And what do they say? Ayeh Chasidel. Look at the juxtaposition of these two. What are they looking for? They look into the Jewish community, having just burst into its walls. Ayei Chasideo means, all of their spiritual leaders, I don't see anyone who's really saintly. Everyone seems to be vulnerable to some kind of accusation, to some kind of scandal. Ayei Chasideo. And this is their excuse for everything they do. Potsu ma'aseh ervo limideo. This refers, according to many of the commentaries, that they took the kruvim, they took the angels who were over the Aron HaKodesh, and they paraded them in the street. They paraded them in the street. According to one midrash, they paraded them as, and say, see, the Jews are idol worshippers anyway. The whole thing is unless it wasn't enough to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, they had to destroy the ideal of the Beis HaMikdash. That those who serve it are not saintly, and even what they serve, you blame us for bringing in a swine. They themselves are worshipping. What are they worshipping? The fact that he refers to them as Maseh Erva. We know that, according to the Midrash, the two kruvim were in the shape of two young people longing for one another, reaching out to one another, in the most spiritual portrayal of love as a metaphor of human love. God's love for Israel and Israel's love for God. But they took it and they turned it into a piece of pornography. Essentially, they degraded it because they couldn't see the divine essence. They couldn't see the metaphor. And so for them, look, the Jews have dirty statues in their sanctuary. Persot Sion b'yodeo, and Zion simply in despair opened her arms. What you hear in the Kinot is from the vision of the aristocracy of Israel, degraded with horrible stomach ailments, to the turning of the Holy of Holies into something pornographic. You see the entire spectrum is that what has been destroyed, what has been taken from us, is not only physical objects and the opportunities they represented, that what they have attacked is the values, as if to say, all of the devotion of the Jewish people to these concepts. It was all corrupt. There was never anything there. And that's the worst. To deprive us even of our memory, of our concept of Marek Kohen, that we once knew sanctity, it was never anything. All it was corruption and even idolatry and pornography. Let's take a few moments to recite Shabbat Surah. Mark, are you going to use distributing the...
No, when you start. I haven't had a chance to. Start when you start.
Shabbat Surah many Shuri Yogais, he was a Simuri, Bedre Haberai.